Good morning, Bitcoin. We're live again. This time for sure, maybe. I don't know. So first, let's recap. We didn't have a network cable. We had a very short network cable. Then we had a network cable, but it still didn't work. Peter, what did you do next?
Well, you know, I like this story because it's evidence. I'm actually technically competent and actually solve real problems. And, you know, I looked at the box the cable went to, and I looked at, oh, that's a router.
No, it was great. We were sitting here on the couch, and we're looking at the box in the other room. Two perfectly competent nerds are running around, fixing problems, working hard. And Peter's like, I wonder if that's a router or a switch.
Yeah.
And I say to myself, I don't know if it's a router or a switch either.
Well,
you
go over there and you look.
Yeah.
And like one of the ports said internet. And there was no cable connected to it. It's like, you know, I'll bet you the internet goes in the internet.
Internet in the internet hole.
Yeah. You know, you put it in and the bit's flow. You know, proof.
So now let's check with the chat. Anyone in the chat, can you hear us? Is it sounding good? We had some stalling before. We had some skipping. It wasn't your internet. It was our internet. We were using Wi-Fi. As everyone knows, Wi-Fi is inferior. Real internet is a hard line.
Yeah.
So I think it's working. We've got choppy video, but smooth audio. Well,
you see, the microphone setup is awesome. That is what we brought, right? The really good setup for high-quality microphones with like this awesome switch table and even a microphone, man.
And a soundboard. Can we have a soundboard demo, Adam?
Play us a song. There it is. Something's happening.
That does need speakers.
Yeah.
Well, you know. Ideally, we're all wearing headphones because it has 4 headphone ports, but I didn't bring 4 headphones. And also, we'd all look weird if we all had headphones on the couch.
Well, we should have like a little in-ear buds thing. So it look like, you know,
pros,
runners.
Donate at home. We'll get some more headphone buds.
Or direct brain implants. That would be even better. And, you know, you could use these chips for other things as well.
Who brought Elon Musk?
I know.
Human mesh network.
He gets rid of all the banks, cuts up all his credit cards, and then he wants a chip in his head. They didn't get you enough at the bank last time. They'll get you for sure this time.
No, it was not a credit cards. They are even worse than debit cards. No, the card that I cut was just a card that I used to get cash out of the bank. But now with no more fiat income, who needs a bank anyway? Come on.
Well, before we got horribly cut off, Max and Peter were talking about books. I think Max was recommending a fantasy book, and I was sitting over here ready to talk about the new book I'm reading, Fail or Doge in Hell by Neil Stephenson or whatever.
Is it about Dogecoin?
No, it's not about Dogecoin at all, but it's about this guy named Dodge, and he's kind of like a Bill Gates type character. Very
Doge
rich.
or Dodge?
I don't know, however you want to pronounce it. Doge, Dodge, either way. It's spelled the same. But he's very rich, a computer guy, and then, like all computer guys, he dies. But
you mean like all people?
Like
just
all
saying,
people.
Everyone dies
guys.
Eventually.
Hang on a second.
Even
not just
computer
guys die?
No. I mean, I learned this when I was 5, and I just cried. You know, it was so sad to me. We all die.
It's like Santa Claus.
But this guy wants to live on, and he signed a deal with a life extension company that got bought by another life extension company that now has a choice. We could try to preserve the entire body. We could chop off the head. Or, even better, we could take the brain out, slice it up piece by piece, take pictures of it, then integrate those pictures to create the neural map or whatever you're going to call Dodge's brain inside the computer.
You know, my philosophy with backups is you always want to back up the whole thing. You know,
the whole thing.
Like, how do I know that, you know, all my thinking happens within it? Maybe like some of it like is in the ears or something. Like,
and what about the gut brain?
Yeah.
Everyone knows there's a second brain in the gut.
Yeah, you know, and all the spine, like there's a lot of neurons in there. Like,
a lot of potential.
Just keep it all, you know, archive it.
So cut up everything.
No, archiving's about keeping the whole thing. You know?
Archive is about keeping the whole thing.
Would you have to split it down into different RAR files, you know, like it... Yeah.
Or only if you're archiving on like Usenet or something. Like,
no, but I mean, of course, we're going to use Ethereum for that. So how are you going to do the sharding?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Upload it yourself on the DApp.
Well, you know, Hal Finney obviously was a Bitcoin user because the whole thing in one place. No sharding.
Now, we still don't know what's happened with Doge's brain yet. I think they ended up cutting it up and scanning it in. But what's great about this book is that was only part 1. Part 2 was even better. There's a small town in Utah called...
What, they put it back together again?
Nah, they put it in a computer, they scanned it, they don't know how to talk to it now. So that's an even harder problem. You have a big set of data, and what are you going to do with this?
That's the thing with slicing the brain up into bits. How do you keep consensus over the shards?
It also destroys the original brain.
Yeah.
It reminds me about a novel about an egg. Or was it a poem? Oh, Humpty Dumpty.
Egg, poem, same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Fell off the wall.
Yeah.
But then in the second part, Moab, Utah gets nuked. But it's not a nuke. So these tech guys go there and they look around and they're like, this is an internet hoax. They cut off the town. Then they had a fake video that was put here. They had another fake video that was put here. They raised over $100 million selling the fake videos. And what they did is they ended up breaking the internet. So all these people believe that Moab was nuked, and they refused to change their mind, putting everyone into this disreality. Then this guy Pluto came along. Pluto's a friend of Dodge, and he has more money than God.
It's true. Pluto used to be a planet, but now it's reclassified as a friend.
And his friend came up with this idea called APEs, where he's going to go out there and basically all the negative people were attacking this one woman. So what he was going to do is put thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of negative comments on this woman's page so that every bad thing thinkable about her would be said. And he's just going to cover the internet, just destroy everything. All blogs, all open systems would be filled with garbage, forcing people to switch to a trusted internet, forcing them to switch to a blockchain internet, a world of reality, a world of published truth. You know what happens? No one believes in reality anymore. They just go deeper into the garbage. No one gets into the trusted internet. That idea dies, and what they start doing is edit streams. There's so much garbage that you hire an editor to edit for you. If you're rich, you have a better editor. You have better information. If you're poor or perhaps religious or don't care about the truth, you have very bad information. So I don't know where this book's going. It's probably 800 more pages, but I think it's really interesting. You guys should check it out.
And so these tech guys, are they just like an IT team or something? Well,
he wanted to ruin the internet. And so he released these things that would multiply and multiply and multiply. Then he open sourced the code for making your own. So now everyone can make their own.
Wait. So you're saying that he needed to open source the code? Like, if they multiplied so well, why do they need people's help?
Yeah.
He just wanted more of them. They just wanted to really wreck it. There's basically a group that I think you would love of people who want to destroy the old internet because it's not trustworthy.
Yeah, I really always remember to love my enemies, You gotta show love to your enemies, and they are my enemies, so I'll show love to them.
There it is. I'd also suggest Stephenson's other book, 7 Eves, about the Earth being hit by a meteor, and then we have to get out of there in a year. And are we going to go to space? Are we going to go underground? Are we going to go in the
I would
ocean?
suggest space. It's far away from the meteor.
It's bigger.
Yeah,
a lot more energy, environmental problems. Yeah. So let's see how we're doing on the stream.
Yeah, 0 viewers now after this bullshit.
Got 0 viewers. Bitcoin Motorist says video is fine, audio is fine.
Contents.
Hey, look, it's Peter Todd.
Whoa,
that's
where?
Hey.
No, actually, I'm Craig Wright.
Oh,
so you are a fraud after all.
That's difficult to
Damn
claim.
right.
But did you see the recent claim about Calvin Ayre saying that that he's got the notes of the original notes of the white paper, and there's like staples and rusty staples.
Oh, that's where that came from. That's so hard to fake.
Oh yeah, coffee stains.
Really, this is not a paperclip maximizer, but staple maximizer, and it's really badly programmed.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Well, so what do you think? What do you think about the original white paper idea? Can they carbon date the the coffee stain or something like that? Do you think they can prove this?
So the problem with carbon dating a coffee stain is really global warming, because we've been emitting so much, recently mined but not recently put down carbon. Putting that in the atmosphere, the carbon dating for the past few years just doesn't work. That coffee would have been grown from air mostly containing CO2 from the ground, which of course is decayed. Thus, it'll look like it's much older than it is. You can't really tell the difference, You
see, Satoshi should have just simply used open timestamp to timestamp the white paper. Yeah, Why didn't he do that?
Well, maybe because Bitcoin didn't exist and open timestamps kind of timestamps to Bitcoin.
Well, but why did he not invent it before that? Come on.
Well, I think Craig Wright's next move is going to be proving that in the future was when the paperclip was created. Thus, because he's a time traveler, he must have invented it because it's such a good idea. Obviously, it would have gone back in time and then stolen the idea from Satoshi. And since it's really about the idea, not the person, thus Craig Wright is the inventor.
He's going to go
Simple.
back in time and invent it in the future.
Yeah.
That'll work.
Yeah. All he has to do is prove that he's a time traveler.
Easy.
Seems easier than
Obviously,
proving that he's Satoshi.
It's
yeah.
obviously a lot easier.
Yeah,
I'd
he's
like to see
already
him prove that
disproved
he's
it.
Australian.
The problem with carbon
Well,
dating.
he could try paying his taxes.
Maybe if he had a pouch.
The problem with carbon dating, you see, is that you
Carbon's
get
so
stood
unattractive.
up a lot. Oh yeah, God, you oh bastard! Stole it.
Too fast.
So is what? How do you reckon this is going to pan out? What sort of random way is he going to be caught out this time? Because it's been like the font size before. There's been a font size. What else? There's been some other really basic amateur faking mistakes. So staples from the year 2019 or something.
I mean, that was the immediate comment people had, and from what I hear, there really are bizarre police databases of things like staples and pens and all that to go and date stuff.
Yes.
So it's not inconceivable. Well, like he didn't even do the obvious thing of just going to a thrift shop and buying a computer that looked sufficiently old to come from the right place. That's how you fake stuff. It's not rocket surgery. Not even rocket science.
Yeah.
If he printed the document, it might have that little code in there. They're supposed to put a little code in all printed documents. You can trace it back.
Well, the beauty of that is they've been doing this for ages. Plus, again, go get a printer from the right date and just use it.
Yeah, but he'd have to put those sprockets in and turn it and stuff. It's really hard to load. He doesn't want to
Have
do
you
that.
used a printer within the past 15 years?
All my printers have little rotaries on the side, green and white alternating lines. And it goes me.
No, but I mean, it is public knowledge that Satoshi wrote the white paper actually on an old typewriter.
Typewriter, yeah.
So actually here, then that
Putin.
that-
Must be Putin.
Well, you laugh, but it is clear it was written in not LaTeX like most
Times
stuff,
New Roman.
but what's the name? OpenOffice, which is slightly unusual, and of course something which plenty of people go get wrong.
Because OpenOffice crashes all the time. Google Docs is better. Of course, if Satoshi had written the white paper in Google Docs, Google would already know about it. Yeah. Every single word that you write.
I actually heard that the original white paper was actually written in Comic Sans.
Made it
That's the
funnier.
Dogecoin white
Was that
paper.
the Dogecoin? Yeah. Does
it have
Dogecoin have a white
pictures
paper?
too?
Does it have a white paper?
I thought it had like a psychedelic purple paper.
Oh, that. That sounds fancy.
We tried to do a plaid paper once, but it didn't really get off the ground. It was a cool
Ludicrous
idea.
speed.
Yeah, it was going to be very fast.
Yeah.
So we're joined by Peter Todd, Bitcoin developer, curmudgeon,
Router fixer.
trouble causer,
Mainly,
internet fixer.
IT person these days.
Yep.
So he lives forever.
Paralelní Polis, IT man #1, in charge of the whole thing.
I am the best IT person in this corner of the couch.
It was pretty strong performance. Load a terminal screen, ping 888, all these things. It was all coming at me.
And I mean, terminal screen like black screen, white color, like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very professional.
Yeah, I nearly went for the green and black, but figured that's just pushing it.
Surely there's some sort of joke there. It's like how many hackers does it take to get the internet working again?
Well, I mean, I think the big joke there is none of them thought just get out their phones and tether.
We did, but the connection was poor. Yeah, it was up and down like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, allegedly it's working now, so give us a thumbs up and a share. We'll try to keep this live stream going until they kick us out of here tonight. It's around 5:30 p.m. in Prague. And Max, do you have any questions for Peter? What's been going on lately? What have you been hacking into lately? What's going on?
Yeah, well, that actually is a very good question. What have you been hacking on?
Well, so I've got a talk on Sunday, which I haven't written yet because of
So write it
this thing
now.
called Proof Marshal that I've been working on. And I actually put some code up on GitHub, which is really embarrassing. And I probably shouldn't say this because people are going to look at it and realize how little is actually there. But, open timestamps is meant to go prove things happened in the past. That's all well and good and useful because other than Craig Wright, the bad guys don't have time machines. proof marshal is meant to extend a little further and say, all right, knowing it's in the past all well and good, but how do you know it's the only thing relevant? Like if I go sell you a house or, write a white paper that's saying I invented Bitcoin, you want to know not just how old the white paper is, but also, am I the only person to have written a white paper claiming to have invented Bitcoin? And proof marshal is about solving the second problem. And the key idea there is the idea of something called single-use seal. It's a seal that can close over something, like some digital data, and you can only do it once. See, if it was a multiple-use seal, it'd be not very useful. But a single-use seal, that's pretty cool, because single thing means you have one consensus.
So how do you open it up, this seal? With a private key?
I might have to work on the terminology a bit, because you definitely don't open them. They start off open, and then you close them over something.
Okay, right?
Right? Because you could open them, you put something else in there, and maybe close it again.
Okay, so you can't do that.
Yeah, But
it's like the ghost box.
Let's suppose you have a Bitcoin transaction output. All right, if Bitcoin works, you can only spend it once. Since you can only spend it once, you can put something in it that you want to close over, like the hash of a message. So then closing a seal becomes spending a Bitcoin transaction output in a certain way and so on. But the cool thing is, so if you can make one thing unique, you can define uniqueness as being unique within the thing that you made unique. And now I can go scale this by closing over a unique thing like a Merkle tree, where all the different parts of Merkle tree have a specific place. And then I define the next level of seal as being where in the Merkle tree did I close that thing. Now I can go do scalable consensus for as many transactions per second as I want.
Is it on the blockchain?
No. That's the beauty of it.
Well, that's shit.
Well, part of it's on the blockchain, but only one little bit of an arbitrarily big thing. I mean, it's like open timestamps. Open timestamps puts one thing on the blockchain, one hash digest of the tip of a Merkle tree.
It's actually time chain.
Can I go swear on live? Like, do we have
Yes.
Fuck you. It is not time chain. Time chain is a terrible name. It is a blockchain. Because Bitcoin is about volume. It is
Time
about...
Chain sounds like a cool movie. I've seen
it does.
Time Cop,
Yeah,
Time
Look,
Travelers.
If Time Cop was a good movie, the Time Cops would go back in time, or forward in time, because I guess the movie was made in the past, to go and shake you for saying time chain. Because time chain does not make sense.
Well, according to Bill and Ted's time travel logic, we just have to remember to do that once we get the time machine. Then we'll come back, and you'll be
See,
shaking
the problem with
grass.
time travel is once you have it, you can't stop double spends. You can always go back in time and then spend it again.
Yeah, so much more fun.
So the Bitcoin time chain proves that time traveling is impossible.
No.
Except that Bitcoin was invented by a time traveler.
In the in the multiple universes view, maybe every time you go back in time, another universe pops into existence. So it really doesn't prove much of anything. In fact, it doesn't even prove double spends because it's only about time. Time chain implies time. Time is not enough to prevent a double spend. You need space. You need to say within this space, this thing only happened once.
Time space?
You are
Time-space
technically
chain.
correct, the best type of correct. There is time involved because not all the coins were spent in one go, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is the space.
A time-space chain. So Satoshi calls it the time stamping server, and
He's wrong.
No, but
she's wrong. It's wrong. Satoshi is wrong. It is not about time stamping.
No,
Satoshi made
you
lots
see
of mistakes. That's one of them.
No, Satoshi's perfect, of course. The the stamp itself.
Craig
the
Wright is
space.
perfect. Satoshi is not perfect.
But actually, the open timestamps saved me from a imposter, actually. Because there was, again, a Telegram imposter running around. And he had a very similar handle than I do. But like instead of an L, it was like some other special character. But then the cool thing is that I could prove with my Euratom protocol that includes the open timestamp of my contact details on my website that actually, since I think there was block 570,000 something, I did not change my contact details. Which
Open timestamps can't prove that. All open timestamps can go do is in the context of that type of attack say the window of time when the attack could have been made was this. But it does not prove that you changed, that you didn't change your contact details, but then didn't tell anyone. Like if I timestamped what is my username on Twitter, I can go do that. I can say, well, at this point, there's some digital data that made that claim, but it does not say whether or not I changed it later. This is why you need volume. You need to be able to say, all right, in this whole space, here is the full set of places where I could put a statement as to know what the heck my Twitter name was. And now I can go search for the whole thing and make sure that nothing changed.
And is this code on? Is your open timestamp code? Is that also on GitHub?
Yeah, that's been on GitHub for ages. I mean, I started that in 2012.
We should fork it and make time space chain.
Yes, absolutely. Because you see,
based on this conversation, I don't think you're going to successfully do this. Your technical competence in these matters is not good enough.
I'm just pretending so that you don't see the threat.
No, you see, it's just GitHub, right? You fork it, Control F, like search and replace, open timestamps, open time space stamps.
I really need to get a trademark on open timestamps just to prevent this terrible event from happening.
Maybe I already traveled back in time and did it while we were having this conversation.
Maybe I gave you the idea.
Ooh, Inception.
Yeah. Years ago.
That's interesting because Banksy just opened up a store in Croydon called Gross Domestic Product, something like that. Gross National Product, some kind of Banksy thing where he's trying to copyright it before this greeting card company steals it from him. So he has a whole storefront. I think it's like gross national product or gross domestic product, some kind of word that describes the Banksy art that he wanted to make sure he owned. So he set up a storefront with some interesting stuff inside, and now he's going to be able to act against this greeting card company to maintain his copyright. So you just need to set up a shop before they do.
And you can sell
This
stamps.
sounds like a legally incorrect analysis of this. Like, you don't need a storefront to
You need
hold
prior art.
copyright.
You've got to get the prior art.
That's not what copyright's about. Copyright's about a unique expression of an idea or something or another along those lines.
Like time space chain.
I wish that was a unique expression of that idea. So many bad ideas.
You could just call it Spain.
I wish I knew offhand how many people were in Spain so I could get a little quip about how like 20 million people are very angry at you right now.
Yeah.
I was there, but fortunately I was in Catalonia, and they're already mad at everyone else in Spain, so I was with the right group.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. All right, so part of Spain
Space chain.
would be with you for then hating the rest of Spain, but then against me for describing them as part of Spain.
The rain in Spain falls mainly on the space chain.
You see, my talk tomorrow here is actually called Time Traveling the Time Chain. So I have to change that title to Time Traveling the Time Space Chain.
The blockchain.
Now, speaking of talks, I remember once when Peter Todd talked about space pirates that were going to mine Bitcoin with solar power. How's that plan going? Are we any closer to achieving it?
We are. I mean, have you seen the success of SpaceX? Like,
They're launching
they
a
tested
NASA
their
anti-asteroid system.
big thing. I forget what name they called it, but the really big
the
rocket.
spaceship, the big silver one.
Yeah, the silver one. And it's such a beautiful design too. It's a big thing made out of really cheap materials, welded on site in the rain. Like rocket science, is like, oh, rocket science, also fancy. That's bad. What you want is, rocket science. Yeah, my brother does that. Yeah, he also makes water towers for a living. Like, they literally hired a company that makes water towers to build their spaceship.
It's kind of like in Armageddon, where they just got the drill guys.
the oil drillers.
The oil drillers. Yeah. They're space cadets.
But see, the problem with Armageddon is like, the oil driller guys, like they were the only ones good enough for it. No, you don't want that. Be like, oh yeah, we need an astronaut. Yeah, get some guys off the street, they can do it.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you want in tech. You don't want tech that's all fancy. You want tech anyone can go understand. You want tech a guy with a fine arts degree after a few drinks can understand. And I am not saying this because I have a fine arts degree.
There are many people with fine arts degrees trying to fix the internet today.
Yeah.
Only one of them succeeded.
The internet, too complex.
How can we make it simpler?
Get rid of
I was
all the
about
people.
to go say get rid of all the wires, but I think that was the start of your problem.
We're happy to be wired now. We're back in the past, back in the future.
Are we, though? Can we prove that on the time space chain?
Only if you stamped it on the Spain, which we call spamming. You can spamp it on the Spain.
I admit I'm amazed at how little hate I've gotten from Luke Jr. for open timestamps.
Is it anti-religious in some way? You should have less children because of open timestamps.
He's just all about, like spamming the blockchain. Other than that one time when his mining pool like had religious quotes.
That was good spam. That's quality spam.
Yeah, quality spam.
Helping
Like
people.
every time you mined a block, it gave you a little, one of the songs.
Well, so his justification was that Bitcoin, of course, has this Coinbase field, and you had to go put something in it. You figured, well, you might as well put a Bible quote in it. Of course, then you didn't have to put all that much in it. It could have been like a byte or two, and he put a full quote. So I think he was spamming the blockchain. Just saying.
Is that included in the block size?
Yep.
So he actually sacrificed some of his well-earned revenue just to spread the gospel.
And with open timestamps, it's interesting. So one of the things that people keep getting proposed is really fancy EC, DSA-based signature commitment scheme to like let anyone make a timestamp while signing a transaction, et cetera, et cetera. It's all well and good. But, of course, with SegWit, the signatures are in the second Merkle tree. And open timestamps works by proving a path up a Merkle tree. Well, that's all well and good for the non-SegWit part, but for the SegWit part, that path goes through the Coinbase transaction. And if you have a mining pool sticking religious quotes, your open timestamps proof would have those quotes in the proof, along with like a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's actually one reason why open timestamps hasn't implemented this fancy ECDSA thing. The other reason being I'm kind of lazy and it's a bunch of complex math. We don't really need it.
Will it move on to Schnorr signatures when they get implemented?
I'm not inclined to put anything in open timestamps other than hash functions. Hash functions work. And if they don't work, we're already reliant on them anyway, so...
And at least afterwards, you've got hash.
Yes, you do. I will pretend I don't understand that joke.
It's very confusing.
We're not savages here.
This is Europe, damn it.
I mean, Canada did legalize marijuana, so...
Hey! Reason to go to Canada.
Although, like,
It's the first one.
it's kind of scary, though, because the government website, where, at least in Ontario, you're supposed to go buy all your pot, they ask you for a credit card. And it's the only way to go pay. Of course, credit card servers wind up going through the U.S., and the U.S. will still ban people on entry for ever admitting to ever consuming pot.
What? Even though it's legal in some states. It's crazy.
Illegal in an entire country that's their neighbor. So, of course...
Only neighbor by geographical boundary.
Yeah, well...
Not by choice.
Yeah. But, like, you go pay, and in theory, because they don't accept Bitcoin, now the U.S. knows that you go and smoke pots, and now they could go ban you entry.
And then we never saw Peter at any more European conferences.
You know, there are flights to Europe from Canada direct, just saying.
You could always take a boat.
Oh, yeah, you could yacht it.
Yeah, I heard a 16-year-old did that recently.
Yeah, save
Kind
the
of
world.
looked inconvenient. Yeah.
Lose a couple private keys on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tragic.
Got to put those little floaties on your keys.
Well, as a Canadian, for the record, I lost all my private keys in a bear attack.
Oh, well, I think we all know that you should be using yacht chain. It's the strongest, longest, toughest, smartest chain, obviously.
Yeah. Now you might be thinking maybe Yacht Chain is too small. That's why we have a new product at Yacht Chain called Cruise Chain.
Ah, that's it, yeah.
We keep your cruise ship from being stolen. Now you can chain your various cruise ships together no matter where they are. They'll all be connected. You never have to worry about losing your cruise ship anymore.
They can't go ashore as well and like tipple over and all that.
I mean, I have a relative who, used to be a captain of ocean-going tugboats. So, he's got some practical experience with this whole cruise chain concept because, you get your tugboat, and your tugboat goes and pulls a barge full of tugboats off to go China to then scrap all the tugboats. Because, if you're running a tugboat company, you really don't want your competitors to go buy up all your old tugboats. You want to get rid of them. That's really the purpose of the tugboat chain.
So they just get them, they burn them, as it were.
Well, they
instead
just scrap them off in China. I mean, if the local Chinese people go buy the tugboats, so what? They're not in competition. But, tugboat chain, it's the future.
I think that's
Yeah.
probably one of the that could be a side chain off of yacht chain, or maybe cruise chain needs to be the main chain, and then there's yacht chain.
Well, also
You know, the
remember,
great thing
chain.
is with the ocean, it's decentralized. So you can have, cruise chain. I can have tugboat chain.
Yeah.
We don't have to compete with each other.
Yeah. Permissionless.
Yeah.
you could even link them together. You could link the two chains.
I think I'd rather just have my tugboat chain in peace.
It's a very independent tugboat.
Yeah. It's the great thing about canoe. You can just paddle around by yourself, or a kayak if you have no real skills in paddling. Like if you can't get a kayak moving in a straight line, you're really not very good at paddling.
Which is very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of movement, a lot of
like
potential of getting
canoes
wet.
are tricky, because like every time you go like this way, kind of wants to go this way, and then you kind of like pull it back this way and do this, and then they want some J stroke or something. Like it's
And
all
you see,
fancy.
there you might need a tugboat chain.
Yeah.
Because it would tuck the
Yeah.
canoe
Tuck the
Yeah.
canoe.
very straight.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a paddling.
We need to timestamp this idea using time-space chain.
Yeah, but
Spain.
which
Spain.
space?
Using Spain.
You're not into the whole brevity thing.
It is annoying because, of course, this is going on YouTube. And then YouTube, they'll, with a bit of hackery, get a download of it. But you can't get a consistent download every time. So if I timestamp my discussion about timestamping the YouTube, it's so much harder for me to then give you that timestamp because you can't just independently download it. I could give you the whole timestamp chain discussion. That could be like 50 megs. I mean, 50 megs, it's no wonder it went and broke the router.
Maybe it'll help if we get out and push.
Have you actually tried turning it off and on again?
I did. That's one of the things that made it work.
I could have told you that. I mean, obviously.
But you didn't.
Exactly.
See, this is the mark of experience.
You must have used DOS.
What about OpenBSD routers?
Last time I used OpenBSD, I think I still was too young to drink.
You still are.
Touche. Funny story of that. I did have a job once where, like early on, and when just after I got hired, they had some company celebration for some milestone they had come to. They're all well and good, and my boss kind of is handing out the little things of wine. He kind of finally gets up to me, 2 weeks onto the job, says, "Oh, do you have ID?" I was 25.
Oh, crushing.
Yeah, crushing.
You should grow a beard. How about a full beard, like Dan Cryptoraptor style beard?
Before I had a beard, and this was literally only about 4 years ago, I went to Asda, it's like a superstore, to get knives and forks, plastic knives and forks for a barbecue, and they actually ID'd me, and I didn't have my ID on, and you were 16. So I had to go outside. And get my girlfriend to, and I was very careful about it because the lady was watching me. If he's going to go and get someone else to buy plastic knives and forks, so I went and sent my girlfriend in, and she said, "No, we do them for someone else."
Plastic knives and forks.
Through or something. Yeah,
What do you do with plastic knives and forks?
Well, I couldn't do anything, so I couldn't get served.
You still would work. We're a national security threat, clearly.
Yeah,
You have to
clear.
get stopped.
This is to get knives and forks.
Yeah, plastic knives.
Because
This
of
is the
pollution
UK,
issue?
Barbecue,
and this is the UK.
yeah.
The UK is a fascist dictatorship.
It's crazy.
You should have seen this great video that just came out the other day. Boris Johnson, the insane British Prime Minister, he's walking along and one of his dogs, like a coffee cup, and he hands it to him. And Boris is about to drink it. Oh, good. The other lady, like, no. Takes the cup away from him. Then Boris says, "Oh, only disposables. Oi, oi, oi." They're calling it one of the greatest political 30-second videos ever because one ape takes away the card. The liquid's already in it. The tree's already chopped down. It's already gone. I mean, we're really talking moral issue here. But I suppose Warren only used cups, and one of his aid knows and one of his aid doesn't, and this is wasted away.
Now, let's be clear. This is a paper cup.
Yeah, Starbucks, plastic top, little ring around it stand.
Well, have you heard of carbon sequestration? Because every tree that you cut down and turn into paper, and then take that paper and bury it in a landfill, is carbon sequester of the atmosphere. You are fighting global warming by throwing away your paper and sticking it underground.
I knew I was doing good.
And that's what was so brilliant about that. He was really telling his obviously highly educated supporters who totally understood everything I just said and already knew it.
Start littering more.
He was fighting global warming.
Hero.
But not actually fighting global warming because he was pulling a tricky one. on the libtards. because they knew he was about to go home and put in his bonfire. Like, that's how many metal levels it's worked at.
If he burns it instead, adding more carbon to the system.
Exactly.
Yes. I can update you here at Paralelní Polis. They've replaced the plastic silverware with these strange wooden ones. I used a wooden fork today. No splinters yet, but it's definitely a possibility. I look forward to putting more wood in my mouth.
They are better. The wood came from a tree, which absorbed carbon, and hopefully they won't do anything stupid like compost it. Hopefully they'll just put into a massive landfill, helping save the planet, one spoon at a time.
Did you know that trees are the only things that know how to make wood?
What's your definition of wood? Does it come from trees?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, you know, humans are the only thing that can grow human flesh.
Yeah.
So far.
And we're not yet making spoons out of that, but
Yeah, the
let's
Impossible
wait.
Meat Company, right now they're only working on hamburgers, but you just wait. Soylent meat. It's made of artificial people.
Hey, you know, there's no animal cruelty if we're cannibals.
I can't wait until they make artificially engineered vegan meat. Surely that's coming at some point.
There's an acronym for that. AVGMO.
Oh, AVGMO.
Agmo.
Of course.
I mean, the scientist in me is like, well, you know, at least like they're getting distracted from like hating on like genetically modified organisms or something, because by the time you're making like meat in a vat, you're doing a lot of biochemistry.
That's the thing. Even the environmentalists who want the fake meat aren't really in favor of these fake muscles and things that they're making because it creeps them out. Because it's a fake muscle. It's an animal that never lived, that never died, that we're going to eat. It's a very strange thing.
Would you eat meat? The fake meat?
I'll have no choice in the future. Enjoy your meat, chocolate, and bananas right now because there won't be any in the future.
Bananas. What's
Yeah,
wrong with
yeah.
bananas?
It's
Are
a
they-
monoculture.
Oh.
It's like the potato.
Yeah.
That's what we said
there's
last time, and then they all got wiped out, and we replaced it with another monoculture.
I like the Cavendish. It's a very good banana.
And weekend, how many times have you eaten it recently?
I had one today.
Uh-huh.
Banana a day keeps the doctor away. But let me drag you guys back to Bitcoin. Recently, I read an article about Jared Kenna. I don't know if you guys know Jared. He was an early Bitcoin adopter, ran an exchange, started 20 missions, co-working space in San Francisco, was very wealthy for a while, was starting a craft brewer, Colombia. In the article, it said that Jared, unfortunately, was hacked for at least millions of dollars, maybe 16 million. Pretty standard hack. It sounds like somebody cloned his phone, reset his email, bunch of money. Obviously, gave poor Jared almost a heart attack, a real feeling losing all this money. And Jared recently has come back to Bitcoin, and he's looking at the community, and I don't think he's liking what he's seeing. Jared sees that most people are focused on the price, they're focused on getting money out of it. He mentioned that in his day, people were focused on remittances. Remittances aren't too hot on the table right now. What do you guys think? Has the Bitcoin community lost its way?
You know, what that goes and shows is half-factor authentication really warps your mind view.
So he should have had a better security system, then he wouldn't have felt so bad.
Yeah, you should have had proper two-factor, you know?
And I don't know why he's keeping millions of dollars online. I mean, if you don't need to trade it, if you don't need to buy $1 million whatever tomorrow, you could keep it offline, right?
I mean, what if this is really like a really elaborate IRS scam where he sells it by hating on Bitcoin after?
It's very clever. He's taking, said he was taking heart medication and such. He could have faked the whole thing.
Like, when you get down to it, this whole remittances thing, I mean, what if what's really happening is remittances with Bitcoin are just getting kind of boring?
Well, what about payments? We were talking when we first started that credit cards, contactless, they have chip and PIN, they have international cards, Apple cards.
How would
pay
we
with my
have ever
phone.
beaten that?
I don't know if we can. I mean, even right now, I double clip my Apple phone.
I
It
think any
becomes a
sane,
wallet.
I think any sane person would have said years ago, and I'm pretty sure I'm on record saying this, Bitcoin's not going to be good for general payments. Like, you know, if he thought that
But how will
before, he was
Max
still
eat if you don't have general payments? I mean, I did 2 today for drinks and food.
Yeah.
They took 0 comp, but it worked. I mean,
They
could
accept
reverse
Lightning
it
now
and
here,
such.
and it's actually working fine. Although it's taking a little longer than I was hoping to find a route. Like full 5 seconds, you know, that's just depressing.
5 seconds is
Whew,
awful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to Lightning these days, just like working in a blink of an eye. I blink a little slowly, but it's still about that.
So, Dan, what do you think? Is Jared Kenna right? Has Bitcoin lost its way?
Well, I mean, I think that there's obviously quite a huge mindset change, from you, and you see the conversations evolve online from what was being talked about 5 years ago compared to what's being talked about now, and how that landscape's changed. And I think that that a lot of people have been taken in by other coins that are maybe quite scammy, for example, and so the wild promises that some of these other coins that they've been making has kind of taken a bit of the shine away from Bitcoin. But with things like Lightning Network, with side chains, with all the Schnorr signatures, there is still that excitement. But obviously, Bitcoin's a lot more rugged. It's a lot more.
But those are all
solid.
Those are all technical things that would excite people. Does Schnorr signatures make the price go up?
Well, I mean, I think what you really see there is like Lightning actually is working. You can actually use it, and it actually works. And
That
it's
must
magic.
drive Roger Ver wild, right?
Yeah, and I suspect that's why like you haven't seen a ton of hype about it, because it's not actual hype. It doesn't fit into the hype marketing machine, because the hype marketing machine doesn't work when it actually works.
Smart contracts.
Yeah, equally, like it doesn't fit into the let's go hate on everything machine, because it actually works and you can't go and hate on it that much. You can have nuanced opinions, but certain aspects of it that don't really work. But who the heck wants to go listen to me go ramble on for 30 minutes other than you guys?
They're loving it.
It's too boring. It works too well for people to realize, actually, they did solve the problem. And great.
Yeah, that kind of sucks, right? You have a huge problem, and then you fix it, and then what now?
What are you going to moan about?
Yeah.
So we're scaling fine, Max?
Yeah, pretty much.
All our troubles are over?
Yep.
Now, what about these articles I've seen where they say that Vitalik and Peter Lubin, they knew Ethereum wasn't going to scale from the beginning, and they were okay with it. Is that okay, Max?
Guess how many Bitcoin they received in their ICO shill? Right?
Hundreds.
Yep. Pretty smart.
Yeah.
Pretty smart.
And then now they say they're going to fix it all with Ethereum 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever it is, right?
You know,
Is that restarting the chain? Like, what is it? What is the 2.0? Is it-
I'll bet you they really want to find an excuse to restart the chain, because then you can do another token raise.
yeah.
Vitalik's been talking recently about giving tokens to developers. Some people say it's a bribe.
Well, Vitalik knows a bunch of devs and can kind of call himself a dev. Of course he's going to say stuff like that. Let's go throw like $100 million at dev things. I mean, look where that got it.
There's that video with Vitalik dancing. It's like a honey badger dance or something.
I mean, like, the
Lot
ugly
of
reality of
unicorn
this is
shirts.
just throwing money at problems when you have all these bad incentives doesn't go work.
Well, no, you just have to throw more money at it.
What do you want to do? Like, go drown them in money?
Yeah.
Problem is, it's digital currency, so you can't drown the devs in money.
Well, you could use open dimes and then just drown them in a bunch of open dimes.
Or paper wallets. A
Paper
lot of
wallets.
paper wallets.
The problem is you can put as many
2,000
bitcoins as you want on one open dime, so it looks a little ridiculous when you literally drop a truckload on a dev you don't like.
Seems a little overkill, yeah.
Well, no, you see, but you want to have your open dimes divisible. If you have one single open dime with 100 million Bitcoin on there,
Admittedly, if I were the open dime people, I would probably be a little terrified of someone putting 100 million Bitcoin on open dime. First of all, because they would have hacked the 21 million coin limit. But also because like that's a lot of risk to put into one $10 piece of electronics. Electronics fails.
yeah, and you say that you like doing your backups. And
Yeah.
that's kind of tricky with OpenDime.
Yeah.
I remember at all the Trezor demonstrations, they used to put, I don't know, $1 million or something and hand the Trezor around the room, and everyone be like, ooh, ooh. But of course, now we know it's a very bad idea to let someone have your Trezor. They'll open it up. They'll
Yeah.
crack it in a way that you're not thinking of.
For most of these hardware wallets is you assume someone with physical access to it can go hack you.
Sure.
There's just so many ways to go do this, and no amount of fancy security chips can go protect you. What fancy security chips do is make it very difficult to audit. What's this thing actually doing? The original Trezor model that they originally kind of started with, let's use an open source running on a non-security hardened CPU, a microcontroller that can actually inspect and figure out what it's doing. That was a good model. But unfortunately, academic researchers and others, they love to go break things in security models they weren't designed for, They get tons of press, but the Trezor's insecure. If you go steal one, you do this, you do this, you do this. I'm sorry, if you can go steal one, you can swap it out with one, steal the pin phrase from it, and then break the one that was secure anyway. Like, it's just not a sane security model. What's sane security model is, I don't really trust my phone. Somebody used something else, simple and auditable, that probably is secure. That's a sane model. And Trezor is, they're being pushed into making their product worse to solve against attacks that are just not that relevant.
Generally, if you have physical access to a machine, you can get into it, like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible when he came down from the ceiling just to get to that keyboard.
Well, I mean, even more than the point, like, you don't need to get into it. I mean, like last year, right here, my talk was on physical security of hardware wallets. And, what I really pointed out was you can open these things up and do things like swap out the screen. You as the end user can't realistically defend against that. And yet you're going to wind up interacting with this compromised system unknowingly and still compromising your Bitcoins. This is not a thing that these companies are actually solving. They kind of pretend to, but they make the product worse in the process.
Now, what do you think about the recent Trezor firmware update? I've been called out a little bit on the internet. Basically, they had the old firmware with Bitcoin and some altcoins. They have the new firmware with Bitcoin only. I thought it might be a separate branch. They say it's compiled from the same branch, so it's still okay. To me, it still seems like two choices, which is twice as much complexity from a user perspective. I worry about people losing their money. They say it's fine, even if you installed over it and then installed back over it. Somehow, your money's still there. They're really pushing back on this. It seems more like a marketing thing than a technical thing. Do you think it's a good idea to have two different firmwares for Trezor, even if they're on the same branch as they say?
This is a marketing thing. Like, as a developer, your challenge is to go test your code and make sure it works and so on. If you now have one piece of code that now can be compiled in two different ways, you've just added complexity to all the different interactions and so on. You have to go
now,
think about
that's what I said, but Pavel Stick said that I wasn't a programmer and that it's actually more like if you had a book that on page 34 it said skip to page 222 and that it's always going to be fine because this. And I was like, but what if the page number's wrong or what if it happens earlier?
You remember
late?
the Choose Your Own Adventures books?
Of course.
Not all of the paths through the Choose Your Own Adventures books actually made all that much sense.
Sure.
Because when you're writing a novel where you do skip from one page to the other and so on, that's just more things to go test and more stories to go read through and make them all sense. And with all the skipping and stuff, you're likely to go miss something. Physically, like, think of it. You're a programmer. You're looking at a bunch of code. Partway through that code, something gets turned off, and a little further it gets turned back on again, and that chunk goes away. You're not looking at this line of code and this line of code in context. Mm-hmm. You now have things that are distracting you from what's actually going on. Maybe in certain cases, yes, this will be more secure, but, it's just not, you can't go call this a Bitcoin-only firmware.
And the big benefit here is that it's hiding the altcoins, right? Couldn't they just have a visual thing where you click like don't show the altcoins or show me only the Bitcoin wallet and you could click show all to see all the things? I don't understand the difference between that and this. There's also, they're telling me that the Bitcoiners were complaining against Trezor, saying that the altcoins could have Trojan horses inside them that could steal the Bitcoins a la Cryptsy and the alleged Lucky 7 wallet code.
I mean, these things don't run full nodes anyway, so they're not going to go in. The code sitting on some server that your Trezor is ultimately talking to isn't going to jump out and hack the Trezor. And if it can, Trezor's really screwed up.
The concern for me, like with hardware wallets, isn't actually. I think it's very low risk that someone's intercepted and ruined it. But I think the biggest risk, in my mind, is having something that's so obviously got Bitcoin. Like if it's on your phone or a memory card or something, no one's got any idea. I mean, obviously,
That's a good OPSEC right there. You're really on it.
But no, I may not have Bitcoin. But if they had if they
Only
see that I've got a Trezor,
it's probably not in the T-shirt.
I think the second part of what you said there made a lot of sense. But the first... all right, maybe that part too. Yeah. But the first part, I think you were quite wrong in that, a bit about intercepting it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a Trezor, the interception risk is so much higher. Yeah. Oh, it's a Trezor? If I go and intercept this in transit, I'm definitely going to go and have a chance of getting some Bitcoin. You don't get that with like a used ThinkPad laptop sitting at a junk shop. That's probably more secure hardware option in a lot of threat models than the Tracer you go get in a in a box. I mean, let alone like Ledger, who keeps on saying, "Oh yeah, we don't need to go and seal our boxes. It's secure." No, it's not. The screen is not part of the secure element. Yeah. I interact with the secure element through a screen. I'm sorry, that's just not a secure thing.
How could they improve on?
Well, I specifically shipping card has it quite well. It's a temp evident back and has a serial number that is printed by only one company in Canada somewhere, and the serial number of the bag is in the secure element of the chip. So you actually physically see if it was opened, and then if bag number is different to what's in the chip, then there's something going on.
Well, hang on. Where do you see the serial number?
On the screen, which is also connected to
which
the
came
HSM.
in the bag. How do you know that the HSM? How do you know the number you see on the screen is trustworthy when you're verifying its trustworthiness by a bag that it's sitting in? Think of your chain of trust here.
We need some kind of trusted hardware for the screen.
Like, don't get me wrong. Part of that whole idea makes sense. It's just displaying the number on the screen of the hardware you just got shipped, potentially intercepted, makes no sense. That you got or own because you're not a caveman living in a cave, and then you download an app or something, and you hope both don't get compromised at once. And that's just the reality of all this stuff. It's hope something you have isn't compromised, and leverage that trust to verify that something else you get isn't compromised.
And just minimize the attack vectors.
As an example, I own a Google Chromebook that I went and bought one day by going up to a store and just picking one off the shelf. And I use it as, this is the thing, I will go and burn, well, to be exact, make bootable USB disks when I need to go and install something onto a new machine. Because that is my... that's a perfectly root of trust. Yeah. A Chromebook's a fairly secure thing. Not that likely Google attack that particular one. It's lots of stuff going on. It's not connected to me. I don't have it logged to my Google account. Not perfect. I definitely do this better, but it's certainly better than just getting my potentially compromised laptop, burning a USB disk, and going off to another thing that was now potentially compromised.
Well, could you go even one level up by having Tails on a bootable USB? And then that way, it's a completely fresh operating system that's not Googled.
Where did the Tails install come from? And I have a funny story about that because I've actually gotten a USB disk from one of the Tails developers. Of course, the problem with that is now you have targeted attacks.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you could have put some sort of signal thing in there to send a...
But a perfectly good option there is you get the Tails thing from one of the Tails devs, and you take that bootable, USB disk, run it on one machine, then cross-verify.
I'm starting to think the only way I can be secure is literally by learning and building everything. I build my own computer, I design the chip myself, just so I know, definitely.
How do you know the chip of the manufacturer matches your design?
It's a terrible world.
Although seriously, I think
math.
The real thing there is that is not the biggest risk. It's not hard to get to a point where it is unlike a system, a registry of cargo libraries essentially, the crates, and that could go back to Orme. And there's no public attestation as to what exactly that server is supposed to be serving up.
You see and hear though, Frank Brown's code chain comes in, because that actually prevents against these targeted backdoors where you have a root of trust chain of versionings, and thus if you then have the DNS single source of truth, you actually know that every user has the official signed by the dev.
And with all due respect to him, I mean, this is a well-known type thing to do. Certificate transparency is a similar idea for web certs. There's nothing kind of fundamentally hard about any of this. It's just people don't do it.
Yeah. That's on my to-do list to get Wasabi on code chain. That would be cool. Yeah. 2 weeks.
Proof Marshal, one of my goals with it is to make it easier to write things that go do simple crypto things like build Merkle trees. Currently, someone says, all right, go, create a Merkle tree of all these software patches. The easiest way to do this is actually with Git, and it uses SHA-1, which isn't really secure. Other than that, there's no easy ways. It should be 5 lines of code. Instead, it's, I'm going to spend a week writing up a Merkle tree, and now my getting all interested in optimizing and so on and wasting time on this. No, this should be as easy as installing MySQL and hiring some random SQL dev to go and type in some stuff and add up the numbers. This should not be hard, but it is.
Why are you using SQL though when you can build a DApp on Ethereum? It's like
I could do it with PHP.
PHP.
Well, and this is the annoying thing about Ethereum. Like, I think it was deliberately engineered to be very easy to use, very easy to go build apps, even at the expense of making it easy to use correctly. Because this is a subtle issue. Like, I, for instance, in my own open timestamps protocol, like, had to make the decision. I could have implemented open timestamps with JSON as the timestamping format. And there's a very early version of open timestamps that did exactly that. And I realized this is crazy because JSON's very easy to parse. But that's not what the problem here. I want it to be easy to parse correctly. And I want it to be very hard to parse incorrectly. In a rigid binary format, while it seems very user-unfriendly, is actually really user-friendly in a security context. Because what's friendly to your users is for their code to either not work or work. The idea is it would never scale and not work properly, just sat there frustrated, rather than losing $1 million in a few weeks.
Yeah, it's a good point. The harder they made it, the less issues.
Well, wasn't there another bug in MakerDAO? Like they were going to lose $12 million or something, but then they fixed it before the money got out. But
well, I mean, so concretely, they found this bug in the test phase. To testing and peer review. And, some people are kind of very critical of some of the press about that, saying, oh, but, this was like the peer review process is the point of it and so on. I mean, that's all well and good. It's, good that they caught it early. But the very fact a bug like that can happen is worrying. If it was just a one-off, one thing, but in Ethereum we've seen over and over and over again these kind of mistakes in smart contracts.
Come on, multi-sig in Ethereum is solved, right? That's easy. They got that for sure.
Great example. Even the guy who wrote the VM can't get it right. There's just something very wrong with that. And I think it stems from a desire to make a lot of money very quickly by attracting users with stuff that I think they understood was fundamentally broken. I think the smart guys behind it. I just don't think they're particularly ethical smart people.
That sounds like a lawsuit. That sounds like a product liability issue. They build such a bad product, so many backdoors. You're saying that multi-sig, just like, of course, remember the DAO, that guy just created sub-DAOs and just kept taking the money downward, and then had to break the chain and all that.
I did actually talk to someone at a project affected by this who said that they were always a product liability lawsuit. And
I don't see why not. They have deep pockets.
Well, I mean, ultimately, like what it came down in that case was apparently, it's in general in the U.S. it is tough to get liability on, even commercial software, let alone like open source stuff. And it'd be an uphill battle, and they still need to be friendly with a lot of Ethereum folks to continue getting more investment. I mean, let's face it, people I talk to are a scam too, but.
I think Boeing's going to find out what happens when you have problems in your software.
Well, I mean, that's a whole nother matter. And funny enough, in that case, it's interesting because the pilots I know are actually much less critical of Boeing.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason is,
it sounds to me they took some buttons away. They didn't put them in the manual. They thought the buttons would be there. They weren't there. It's a big,
none
big
of
mess.
that's true.
Everything I've read is a big mess.
No, like what the pilots I know tell me is, who've read the accident reports and it's come up in their workplace these pilots were incompetent and they did not do things that they should have done and should have noticed. Now, yes, Boeing had a flaw,
failure in training and all kinds of things.
But this is not a thing where all the fault's on Boeing. This is a thing where the airlines involved are really not very good at their job, and they failed to go correct something that should have been correctable.
And how's it going to turn out?
A massive PR disaster for Boeing, and potentially grounding a whole fleet of planes indefinitely, and them going bankrupt. That is a potential outcome.
Less airplanes, higher cost travel, bad for
most
me.
likely U.S. government would go step in and bail them out. Its best point of view is, integral to security, the national security of the U.S. It's how you can make a heck of a lot of military planes and so on. So, like a lot of stuff, they'll probably get bailed out if that happens. A likely outcome, too, is they just lose a ton of money on it, and then, that's that, and it gets fixed.
So going back to the potential lawsuit, I suppose. So you're saying about Ethereum, about the code. News today that from the FCA, I think it was either today or yesterday, that they actually want to extend AML5 to open source code around crypto assets. And does that?
Good luck on that.
Yeah.
I mean, they can do all kinds of things, but I think this sort of fits the wider anti-security debate. There's a lot of people in government who want to go ruin security, and I think that they would love to go see another way to go get control over all these open sources. This is more than just cryptocurrencies. This is a orchestrated attempt to get wrest control over this massive open source community that's creating software that's very difficult to regulate.
Yeah, and even these regulations come out, and then we will see projects like GitHub, for example, being a centralized service, as we've already seen, right, with answering devs out of, even for example, that will continue, right? But after all, I mean, the internet is somewhat of a hunter, so we were just going to run
It's more so than it used to be.
Oh, yes, absolutely, but I mean, like the entire cyberspace, I would rather say. Then we will just run our own Tor hidden services to distribute the Git.
I mean, the problem is, like, Tor is centralized, and there aren't good ways to get around it. I mean, the internet is ultimately quite centralized in a lot of key respects.
Yeah.
If governments really want to, they
planet.
can screw stuff up. Well, like you go through an ISP, and that ISP can go and whitelist internet access. And say, here's those things you're allowed to visit, and that's, at some point you get into a political situation where recovering isn't really possible without the people in authority screwing up somehow. China is probably at that point. Unless the Chinese authorities screw up, they can probably do whatever they want to the country and have as much fascism as they want. The technology enables this. And it enables us in a way that you couldn't do in the past. Like, East Germany, I think, is an example where they were beginning to computerize their records about dissidents. They're beginning to computerize their infrastructure to go and clamp down. I've actually been in a room where they had one of their mainframes off in Berlin. Fortunately, the revolution happened prior to that really happening. It's not really clear that would East Germany actually fell, would the Berlin Wall fall, had shifted 30 years forward. Potentially, you'd have technology to keep control in a way that you couldn't back then. And that's the point, like Facebook recognition, you can just keep track of where everyone is constantly. If you can do that, you can do stuff like just arrest people the moment they start to fall out.
Minority Report. You can just
Well, I'm posting ban acts. Once you do that, now you can go and track everyone who attends a protest. And it's totally feasible to go to the population in jail, especially when it's a breakaway part of a much bigger country. I mean, China's probably big enough that they'd be willing to just go in there with guns and kill everyone. The real issue there is international relations, and it's a lot less messy if you use facial recognition to arrest people. It's much less messy, for instance, in northern China, where the Muslim minorities are getting persecuted in massive camps. And we're in a position where this could end up being a repeat of something like the Holocaust. The Nazi regime.
Which they pretty much are.
Have you been to Germany?
Not that bad.
Germany's a success story here. Twice over, with East Germany. But, China, like, it's a different world, and technology enables things in ways that you couldn't before.
But it's always a cat and mouse race, though, isn't it? That something that hackers, people that want to avoid their facial
I don't like the analogy. I think it's cat and mouse. I think at some point it becomes a cat in line or a cat in their tipped missile. Like, at some point the technology gets so good, there's nothing you can go do. Like a thought experiment I like to give to people is, suppose, like right after birth, everyone's outfitted with a little neck collar with some explosives that could be set off remotely. Could you have a revolution? No, you couldn't. You just couldn't.
No.
Even if you had the right to bear arms,
in a scenario that bad, you probably wouldn't matter.
it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You can't in a situation where authorities have enough control, they can do whatever they want. And especially with manufacturing becoming more and more automated. A lot of control is about industrial output. If people aren't actually the things that control industrial output, it doesn't really matter that much.
It'd be a shame if they put something in all these boxes we carry around with us.
Yep.
And they could just...
Like GPS trackers that have such bad security, random people could just go to phone companies, go and dump logs of location data. Oh, wait, that actually happened in the U.S.
That sounds totally safe. That won't hurt anyone at all.
Crush, I want that.
Oh, the Candy Crush part isn't the problem. The problem is the cell phone companies. Candy Crush is harmless.
So I saw something else interesting on Twitter recently. Bruce Fenton, the Satoshi Roundtable guy, he put this big statement out there. He said he was looking for a challenger, somebody to debate him, somebody to fight him. And the issue that he wanted to fight out, of course, you have to be careful when someone's choosing what area they want to fight about. They've probably prepared a lot